Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for what's certainly going to be an informative panel about the emergence of esports facilities worldwide. I'll be moderating the panel. My name is Cameron Reed. I'm the esports business development manager for Ross Video. As you saw in the video that rolled before this, we're very proud to be a sponsor of this event, and we've been helping esports productions and esports facilities and events with their video production needs for a long time now. We've been very successful in that sort of regard. And so it seems like it would be a natural fit for us to moderate this panel. I've been personally, before I joined the Ross team, directing and producing large live esports event coverage since 2014. My first professional directing job was for BlizzCon opening weekend in 2014. A bit of a trial by fire, but it went well, and I went on to produce and direct many of the largest esports events in the world, including IEM, ESL One, Madden NFL Championships for ESPN and NFL Network, among many others. I'm joined by an expert panel of people who are also involved in esports facilities. And so we'll start by introducing ourselves. Thomas, so why don't you introduce yourself to the people at home and tell us a little bit
Right.
about your background in esports?
Sure. I'm Tomaso. I'm one of the co-founders of Platform. Platform is currently a one-site company. We're in our growth phase now, and we offer hospitality and gaming experiences to a customer. The angle is that we want to offer gaming and esports opportunities for both the casual and core gamers. So we're not the most kind of esports centric concept at the moment. And we've been open since March 2019 in central London, UK.
Thank you. We'll just maybe go counterclockwise here then. Victor, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Cameron. So my name is Viktor. I'm in esports since the last 17 years. I'm the CEO and founder of Kinguin, a video games marketplace, and the Kinguin Esports Performance Center in Warsaw, in Poland, which is the most visited commercial facility for top esports teams around the world. And lastly, we have this year also opened our own retail esports launch.
Thank you. And Walter?
Hi, I'm Walter. I run operations for an esports team called TSM. We're based here in Los Angeles. And this year we just recently opened and completed our new performance center in Playa Vista, where our League of Legends team is playing and hopefully win this Sunday in LCS.
I love that you're so humble. Oh, an esports team called TSM. You may have heard of us. For the for the people who haven't heard of them, that'd be like Jerry Jones saying, "I own a team called the Dallas Cowboys." You know, you may have heard of us. And last but certainly not least, Rafal, why don't you introduce yourself to the people watching?
Hi. Hello, my name is Rafal. I am CEO and owner of ARAM company. We are design and technical production company which stand behind ESL One, Intel Extreme Masters, Friends Esports Studio in Poland, H2O facility in Amsterdam. We're designing, building, and doing the whole technical production for studios and big esports events all around the world, including Europe, United States, India, and even Brazil.
All right, great. Well, as you can see, we've got sort of a wide spectrum of experts on the panel, covering multiple types of facilities, and I think it's important early to sort of distinguish between esports arenas and esports practice facilities, because the topic is esports facilities, and therefore it really does cover both of those. But both of those have different challenges. However, there is a little bit of overlap, certainly, where both of them, even the practice facilities now, do aim to sort of attract a crowd and bring in members of the public. Walter, maybe we could start with you, since you guys have launched your facility there. How do you guys go about trying to bring in an audience to your facility?
Yeah. When we designed our training facility, it was mostly for performance for our players, but as you mentioned, it is also important to create fan experiences for, you know, our thousands and millions of fans around the world. Whether that be viewing parties at our facility, whether that be some maybe we were thinking about training camps or practice camps at our facility, where you know we have a bunch of scrim rooms, we have a bunch of setups, and we have obviously an excellent coaching staff. And then we also have, of course, designed it in mind where we would have, you know, big fan engagement, big sort of esports parties as well in our facility that could be branded, that could be sponsored. That was sort of the idea around our training facility for public events. Unfortunately, here in Los Angeles, because of COVID, that those plans are a little bit put on hold. But luckily, that we are able to have some of our esports teams still play and train out of the facility, um, you know, all isolated and things like that.
Victor, did you have any thoughts on the topic of how do you plan to attract a crowd?
That's me, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
sorry,
Okay.
Victor.
All right. Um, yes, our facilities are a bit different, right? So number one, we have a B2B facility. It's the Esport Performance Center, which is directed not at the public audiences, basically the retail audiences from the street, but it's directed at professional teams. So the business model there is simply to attract the best teams in the world, you know, give them the best possible conditions to have a private and discreet training, and that automatically excludes the public. However, we also operate as a community center, but more in the sense of the business community center, or let's say the academic one. So we organize also lots of professional events in the facility. And among the very few retail events, we actually finished esports summer camps in the facility for this year, which were amazingly so sold out despite the COVID conditions. It's a horrible thing, of course, for our business. Um, and so far, it's been going well. So our experience is positive.
Great. So far, Walter and Victor have spoken about great ways to attract esports enthusiasts, whether they're players or fans. Tomaso, I know that you and I were chatting a little bit via email about, well, how do we not only include the people who are already sort of in our tent, but how do we make our tent a little bit bigger? How do we attract audiences for people who maybe aren't from the sort of esports culture already?
I think it's quite an interesting topic, and I think it came into my plate as the venue that we built is both for casual and core, and as the business model stands, selling gaming, casual gaming and food and drink experiences is a lot easier to sell to the casual gamer rather than the core gamers. But as the way the place is set up, we have a big esports stage in the middle of the venue, and it has all these kind of sponsors attached to it with names like ESL, Razer, and stuff like that. And these casual gamers are usually quite interested in seeing, oh, what's that about? What's this big stage about? Why is it a 5v5 setting? So they're quite curious about it. And I think talking with few of them, they usually quite feel a bit intimidated about the fact going online on Twitch, something that they're not really aware of, and seeing Twitch chat and these games they don't understand. So I think physical spaces are a great way to attract non-esports fans for their first esports interaction. And I think a big esports brand should, in a way, try and use that to be the first brand that these people see as they try and get into esports for the first time. So yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I think it would be good for the industry as a whole if we could get these people interested into esports. And yeah, I think going back to business models wise as well, at least for hospitality physical spaces that have gaming attached to it. In my experience, it's a lot easier to monetize and have people spend money on a night out for casual gamers rather than the core gamers. I think there's this big debate about what value are we actually adding by creating a physical space. Is it just the tech, or is it something else? What the experience really is? I think, now internet and having a decent hardware is basically accessible for the mass population. So my point of view is when you build a physical space like that, whether it's for core or casual, you need to add to the experience, whether it's from the atmosphere, who you bring in, the music, the service, everything that goes around as well.
Now, an important distinction too, that we have to talk about is that differentiates like an esports facility from a sports facility is that in order to show esports, you absolutely mandatorily must have an audio video solution. The game is not being played on a field that you can just build a bowl around and then optionally have cameras and big LED displays. The only way for the audience to see what's being done by the competitors is with an AV solution. And so that's certainly what our company has been working to help esports with for such facilities like HyperX Esports Arena, as well as the Arlington Stadium. And Rafal, I know that you have been involved as well in designing some of these systems. Tell us a bit about some of the challenges that esports arenas provide and some of the needs that they really have from that sort of AV perspective.
Yeah, so generally speaking, in even we design and build huge stages, huge arena like ESL1, we are also involved in studios and also involved in a smaller project. But everywhere we need some arena. So when we have some venue like Viktor have, which is strictly for players, it's a little different story. But if you have a venue where the audience coming in and some normal people coming in, the fathers with the children's coming to watch the esports, because that's all we want to do, we need the screen, we need the stage, which will be some nice looking. It's simpler or more advanced, it will be nice looking. The good example of it, of our experience, and it's H2 Arena in Amsterdam, when the Amsterdam give the old school to the founders of H2O venue, and they want to create the esports center. And this is opposite to what Viktor have. This is esports center when open for everyone and open for many activities. And of course, they seen the stage which we did, which we designed for ESL, for IEM. That's where we met. But they have a big gym room and they want a big stage there, and we came in and say, hey guys, it's well too big, you don't need it, you need the multifunction space where the stage is important, it's a part of it, but it's not the only thing which you have. And of course we moved this stage to this to the smaller scale, to the different place, to the half of this venue, and the rest of this venue was adopted to the different activities. And those different activities, we don't know what it will be successful in the future. So you have to be open for the future activities when designing such venues. But of course, the big LED screen, it's like a grass on the football stadium. It's a must-have, bigger or smaller, but it's a must-have. So there are a few things which is must-have, like from technology, like a mixer, like a streaming, like a screen, like some lights. But definitely, you need the smart solutions, not that big to the like on the big arenas, but you have to be able to make a professional stream, because we can all do this stream from an even small venue.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it kind of brings up an interesting topic that I think will help us transition also sort of smoothly into talking about the player facilities and the practice sort of facilities, which is that in addition to designing your arena with the audience in mind and being able to put on a professional, high quality presentation that you can tell compelling stories with stats and replays, you also have to respect the players, right? I can recall from my directing experience having long, difficult conversations with lighting directors and designers who wanted to shine a key light directly on every player's face, for example. And certainly I kind of wanted it too, because it meant my pictures would be better. But we also had to find a balance where, okay, but the player can't play if he can't see. Walter,
That's
I
a big
know
problem.
TSM has competed. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rafal, if you have a thought, please.
Yes, that's a big problem in the classic lighting design, classic people from a broadcast, because they know how the lighting work, but they don't know the esports work. And we have a very long discussion and a long story behind us choosing the right light to not warm up, to not blind the players, to be a proper lights, to be the proper angle, and all these are crucial things in design of big arenas, but also in the small things. So those people pack a lights, and I remember the Friends studio, the studio, esports studio, which is owned by Polish largest private broadcaster, and they hire some top guy set designer, and because he worked for this together with this TV, and they fire him after the second project, and they call us, hey, we have 3 weeks, can you help us? Because this guy didn't understand the esports. He understands camera, he understands the all this crucial thing of broadcasting, but he didn't understand the esports. And the opposite way, the esports people very often they are not very professional in lights. So you have not the proper face and the players, and they have to understand that this is a broadcast, and this could be the broadcast from the Lanxess arena, and this could be a broadcast from the small studio, and this could be really attractive content, but it has to be prepared well. And you don't need to own all this equipment if you have occasional events in such venues, but you have to be prepared on the design to be able to hang this gear and to make it as flawless as possible when you have such event.
Yeah, and you bring up a very interesting point, which is that I think when designing esports facilities or productions, it's very important that you have some esports people involved on your team. And I think that the esports people also need to respect the expertise sometimes of the professional broadcast folks. And I think the most successful deployments I've ever seen have always been when there's a good marriage of that and a blending of those worlds. Certainly the professional broadcast people who light, let's just say, Dancing with the Stars here in the United States, they know what they're talking about and they have a lot of experience, but they do need to respect our challenges because it's different. Our challenges are unique compared to something like The Voice or one of these big stage competition shows, even though what we do looks so similar. Viktor and Walter, I know that you gentlemen probably have a lot of experience, certainly with esports athletes who are experiencing these challenges from a totally different perspective. I'm in the control room and I want a pretty picture. Your guys are playing for sometimes millions of dollars in a do or die match. So I'll leave it open to both of you. How do you talk to your team when they come to you and say, man, it's really hard to play on this stage with the bass and the thunder from the crowd and all of the distractions that they don't have when they're playing normally in the practice house?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think, in a LAN environment, it's just completely different, right? If you talk to a lot of our players, you talk to our Rainbow Six team, our League of Legends team, they all say playing in LAN is just different, right? There's a lighting aspect, there's production aspect, there's a huge audience perspective. Sometimes the guys are saying, I can't hear comms, right? I can't hear comms because it's so loud. From our perspective, to be very honest, it's and from what I understand from top players is that that's something that you just have to deal with, right? That is the beauty of competing, right? It's just another hurdle that you just have to overcome. And if you can't play on LAN, then you're not going to be a good player. And a lot of rookies have those nerves and don't adapt to that situation very well. And so, you see often rookies, when their first or one or two LAN tournaments, they don't do that well because they haven't adjusted to that. And then, but if you look at our veterans, they've done it before. They can handle the crowd, they can handle the production, they can handle all the media they have to do, the press, the makeup, the interviews, and also, sit down and focus to compete. It's a mentality that you have to build. That's how we view it.
Yeah, I completely agree with Walter. Like the guys, they usually very professional. They understand this is part of their job. This is what they must do. Of course, they expect some alignment also from the camera people to their gameplay. In our facility, in specific, we deal with a bit different kind of talent. So the guys coming to us in terms of audio video, they expect something which can improve their training in specific. So we are looking, for example, here at interactive screens, which coaches can use, of course, to better, explain situations and discuss them with their players. We have, for example, installed TVs in the training rooms, so the coaches can see at one time the point of view of all their players, in different situations. So this is how we work with audio video in a training facility in specific. By that also by the field we are ready also for tournament transmissions, etc. For example, it was a very curious situation when COVID happened. Basically, Poland was on a lockdown, and we had Tailu, the famous Chinese team, in the facility. They've been training, and they were actually caught by surprise, and they were not able, to leave the facility. So they stayed for another 2 months in the facility. However, for them it was also interesting because we were able to provide an audio and video feed from the facility to the tournament organizers. So while they basically playing an online tournament, they had the only video feed from the facility of the guys, how they were playing live from there.
Yeah, and to add on to that, if you talk about from a design perspective for facilities on how to replicate stage play, like we did that in mind when designing our facility. For example, LCS stage, they have a particular dimension for the table, right, that the guys play on. We actually custom made all the scrim tables for our LCS players to be the same specification, right? So we try to replicate pretty much exactly how they would play on stage. They don't get double monitors; they only have a single monitor, right? Everything that they for their practice room is pretty much trying to replicate what they would see on a stage.
I think that's a great transition to talk about the practice facilities as well. There's a lot to be considered when you're designing a practice facility for these players, as I'm sure you guys have found out. I'm also interested not just in some of the AV stuff and how do you attract an audience and all of that, but what other considerations do you have that you might not initially think about? I mean, like kitchen space, exercise space. How do you make a practice facility I remember in the early days of esports when I was doing like StarCraft 2 streams with NASL, we were talking about Jaedong practicing 13 hours a day. And that just sounded insane and depressing. And it seems like we've moved away from that. So tell us a bit about some of the other stuff that goes into designing this with the players in mind and their health and performance being paramount.
Yeah, we've come a long way, is what I'll say. I mean, if you talk about the early days of TSM, the gaming houses and then Dyrus almost burning down the house because of microwave some food and things like that. But when we design our performance facility, we really try to think about it. How do we actually put in hardware that we will use that the players could get even 1, 2, 5% more better performance, right? So we thought about we have a full scale gym, right, designed by experts in heart and hustle. They train professional athletes like LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and things like that. And design a fitness program that our players have to do 2-3 times a week, right? We have a wellness room where the guys will do yoga, meditation, stretching for recovery and things like that. We have a full-scale kitchen to bring in nutritionists, dietitians, and do even blood work. So we'll actually do blood work for all our players now, where we decide, hey, like, are they deficient in testosterone? Are they deficient in glutamine? Or do they have too much mercury or arsenic in their blood, and change their diet and personalize their diet for each player? That's where we're heading. And we're starting to do these type of things in our facility.
Yeah,
amazing.
I can say here that within my career, I have managed esports teams as well. I have worked with many esports teams. So when we designed the esports performance center facility in Warsaw, in Poland, we had to resemble these experiences we had in the past, especially with gaming houses. So while resembling is in specific the kind of like home-like experience, because for example in the facility we were really surprised by this, but the players, the top players in the world, they're moving barefoot within the facility. They feel so comfortable. Um, but adding on top of that, there needs also to be a very strict separation between kind of like home and like living and work. So, for example, in our facility, we had a completely separate floor, which is dedicated to living. Where the gamers they sleep and they eat. So the kitchen is there and the gym is there, and then they move into a separate floor where it's completely about performance. So it's about a switch of mind, like, okay, I have finished my rest and now I'm going, to give it my best, and I'm going to be the best performer out there. So they have the on that floor, there is the server room, there are the training rooms, there is their player lunch where they kind of like have their sessions with their coaches after training sessions. um, and also this is where they eventually have their lunch. So this really worked well. At the end of the day, they can simply go out. They could go into the last floor, which with equipped with terraces. So that they hang out together. They socialize. They might have some drink if their nutritionist and manager allows them to, of course. And they are under constant monitoring, from their coaches, from their analytics. Um, Another, something which very surprised us. We were thinking, for example, as our not very close proximity to downtown as a handicap, and it shows actually to be an advantage. The teams coming in, and they are not showing any sign of interest into going and hanging out in the city and kind of like behaving like tourists. They came here, to focus, to give it their best, and we are speaking about periods like 2 weeks plus, staying in the facility. So that's really not a short time.
Now we're starting to get close to the end of our time, and so the last topic before I think we move on to some audience questions, which are starting to come in, is probably the elephant on the planet right now, which is COVID-19. Certainly, everybody's life has been affected by it, and we're talking
It's a
about
horrible thing.
facilities which are generally indoor. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot that can be done to try to overcome these social distancing challenges as we sort of as a species are trying to overcome this enormous pandemic that we're dealing with. And Tomaso and Rafal, I know we haven't heard from you guys for a little while. I'd be interested to know what steps you're taking at some of the facilities you've been involved with to address the social distancing concerns and COVID-19.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, which is, as I said, both a hospitality setting and a gaming setting, there's quite a lot that has been done. From the floor plan layout, the distance between each table and customers. We've put some PVC curtains between each gaming booth and console booth. There's PPE, there's hand sanitizers, there's floor markers that remind people about social distancing. There's a whole new section in our online booking where we talk about these rules and we advise people what to do, what not to do. We've moved some tables outside as some people just want to have some food and drink and rather have an open space to do so. We do some temperature check of customers as they come in. We keep a log of the temperature of our staff team, so we can track if anyone's starting to have one of the symptoms, which is having a fever. We operate on different rotas of staff teams. So if one team is infected, the other one can take over without any issues. So the list can go on forever. At least in the UK, there's been a lot of recommendations, but in the end of the day, it's about making sure our customers and our staff are safe, and that's always our top one priority.
Yeah, and Rafal, I know that another very interesting topic recently, not just in esports, but that will touch a bit upon your expertise, has been remote production, and enabling people to still put on these professional shows in arena and on the stream on Twitch or to television, without being confined in the control room. Which, let's face it, I've spent a lot of hours in control rooms, and they're tin cans. It's like sardines in there. How have some of your clients that you've been working with tried to address those concerns?
Oh, the remote production, it's something which is happening, but the problem is that you have to build the stage which you do this production from, and the people have to come in to make it happen and to build this. So these restrictions you have, and you have when you design and you build the stage, you need to send less people to the work. Less people together are on the venue to build. You have to split this work properly, and then limit this numbers to make it happen in probably in the more time, usually in the more time, because it takes more time to achieve the similar effect, but then you can broadcast it. That's what's happening now. We work on many studios, on project of the studios, and existing studios, when we adopt to be able to broadcast from there and make these live streams, and even the mixer operators can be fully remote. There have to be some people there, and you have to take care about them. And as Tomaso said, all these procedures, and be very strict about this, because this COVID, one person and can broke you everything if it's happened. So the whole production and whole building the stage can just stop. So yes, we are very focused on this to make it happen. Sometimes to double the people that can do the same thing if something happened with the team which is there, and we can send another team completely new. And this is how we are trying to do this.
Great. Well, I think we have just enough time to get to a few questions from the audience, and there's some interesting questions, and questions also that kind of bring up some topics that we touched a bit upon earlier, which is great. In fact, the first question is, can you give some insight into how to make these esport venues self-sustainable? Is revenue coming mostly from F&B, casual gaming, from the competitive scene, or from events that might not be esports at all? So
Okay.
not sure who to address that one to. It was to the group at large.
I don't mind jumping on this one, as I put a bit of thoughts into it. I think it all depends on the scale of the venue, of course. If you go on a small scale with what we operate in platform, diversifying your offer is what's going to make it work. To give you a broad idea, our business model is like about 75% food and drinks and 25% gaming. But our USP is gaming, so that's the reason people come to us. But that's where you create your business model. And I talked with a few people who had larger arenas, where F&B is not enough to sustain a huge arena type of business model. I think it's about being versatile and being not, at least at this point in time, not esports focused only. You need to be able to sustain different types of events, which could be sporting events, which could be conventions, corporate events, and esports at the same time. And I think this is where we are at the moment. I would hope that in the near future we'll be able to have a huge esports calendar that just never stops and fills this venue day in, day out. But I doubt that we're here yet.
Yeah, and it's an important point too to note that one of the great things about, like we talked about, esports arenas needing quite an extensive AV kit is that once you own that AV kit, you aren't really limited to esports. Certainly TED Talks or concerts or other sort of live events are all certainly more than capable of fitting into an esports sort of production workflow or arena. Viktor, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I know that
Yeah, no,
Sounded like you had a
it's
thought as
fine.
well.
I agree. I agree with diversity in specific. In general, I mean, I agree with diversity of this of the income. However, as Tomaso mentioned, I mean, there will be
Mm,
and most likely that's going to be the food and beverage.
mm,
I
Just make
think
sure.
Victor maybe. Oh,
Okay, maybe it's cutting down a bit.
oh, I think we've got you now. Go ahead.
Okay, diversity is cool, but as Tomas mentioned, there will be a dominating revenue stream.
mm,
So it's really, I think the best way is really to focus on that, and make sure that you have really a good food, in your facility, because that might actually decide if people are coming back or not. This is the part of the experience they are expecting when they coming to you, that they are going to have something, other than maybe, let's say, food which they have to, to do in the microwave themselves at home while watching Twitch at home.
mm,
So it really needs to be about that, and I think people should not overthink it and overdo it with diversity. Really focus, on the and in the very first place to simply focus, on making this a place for the community.
mm.
Hey, interesting thoughts. Another question has come through, and I think Walter, this one might be right up your alley. It's a very specific question.
Okay.
In terms of living and training facilities, what kind of security and monitoring is appropriate for managing the players? For example, do you have security cams set up inside?
Yes. So just like for all of our players are quite popular, right? So a lot of them have fans, and some of them are crazier than others. We've had incidents in the past for our players where, it was very concerning. Some players sometimes, fear sometimes for their life, because of some of these crazy fans. And so we do have a security system. We have cameras installed. I don't want to share too much on this broadcast because then people can find out about it. Um, but no, I'm serious because we've had some
Yeah.
serious concerns. Like people find addresses, people try to break in, people try to find and find people at events, and so it is a legitimate concern. And so we have security protocols, we have a system in place, and we have to continue to monitor it, especially as esports grows bigger. I mean, think about traditional athletes and traditional celebrities, like how many things they have to think about in their life. Our esports
Mhm.
athletes and influencers are starting to get to that point as well.
It's really unbelievable. I
I can
mentioned
say very
earlier.
very shortly, as a commercial facility, we have also security in place. I also don't want to share much, but for example, we have 24/7 security on spot. There is a security agency which is actually guarding the premises. There is even a 24/7 concierge, because there are also other unexpected events that might happen in the facility, and not essentially regarded to security. For example, we had a 4 a.m. situation in the morning where a player simply needed a doctor, right? So you have to react. You have to have protocols in place and procedures, and it's absolutely essential.
Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable too. It just points out something that to me is really exciting, which is that when I started working in esports in 2012, I don't think lines of fans or security for potential dangerous fans was something that possibly could have entered my lexicon or understanding of where this thing might go. And here we are, only 8 years later, and we're talking about it. Really kind of crazy and a little scary, but in a certain sense, sort of exciting, because that means we're the real deal now, right? We've
Yeah,
got
but this
rabid
is what we
fans that we
mentioned at the
need to
start. Like, for
protect our
example,
players from.
Mm,
simply, these top players, they come into the training facility and they expect not to be, I mean, sorry to say that, but simply bothered by fans, right? I mean, they expect to have the place for themselves, and We even had like situations where it was really interesting for us that you had a top 1 tier team. The player from the less known teams, they tend, to let's say more invasive to the privacy of the top players, and even that's an issue. You have to deal with.
Mhm.
Well, we have time for one more question. And this one's interesting. They even framed it with, this might be an odd question, but do you think in the future esports facilities and training centers could be somehow expanded into a home venue of sorts instead of stadiums? Not 100% certain maybe what home venue might even mean, but it's certainly an interesting thought. Does anybody have any
Can you
sort of
repeat
thoughts
that
on that
question,
question?
It's
Sorry,
something like
Kinguin?
a comeback.
I think from an esports team perspective, you're already starting to see some teams think like that. Like you look at the Pittsburgh Knights, right? They have a training facility and they also have a home stage, so that because Overwatch League is really trying to localize their businesses, right? Because you look at traditional sports, most of their revenue is actually from their localized revenue, right? Their stadium ticket sales, food and beverage, parking, things like that, which is really hurting right now because of COVID. So some teams are looking into using having hybrid, like, hey, home stadium plus training facility. I think the best examples that you can see of this is actually China. A lot of Chinese teams have localized stadiums. They have a local training facility, and they sort of are, I would say, ahead of the curve in terms of that kind of hardware than the West.
Right. Well, that I believe gets us right up to the end of our time, gentlemen. I appreciate very much all of your expertise and experience and thoughts on some of the topics that we've covered today. I hope that this has been informative for everybody who's been watching at home. Again, we at Ross are very proud to have been able to sponsor this for you. Myself, and I'm sure the rest of the gentlemen on the panel, will be available today within the app. Certainly, I'll be tuning in to the remaining programming that's on the schedule for today. And don't go anywhere, because coming up next, we do have a very exciting panel. It's going to be about merchandising, which may not be my area of expertise, but certainly I'm able to recognize that that's a huge potential market. If you compare esports to other sort of industries and traditional sports, they certainly make a lot of money on on putting names on the back of jerseys. So can we get there as well? Hopefully. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next panel. Thanks.